What's up guys, it's Finn with treehouseoverland and it's time to introduce you to a new member of the family. This is Vanessa, my lovely wife.
Hi.
And this is Felix. It's an 03. We've had it for about half a year. We're gonna do a spacer lift on it. So I started out with a spacer lift. I ran it for about a year before I could save up for my big boy lift. You can watch that build video if you like, but we're just gonna do something easy. She just wants to be able to clear 33s. We gotta keep this one kind of stock. We're trying to have at least one vehicle that gets bad gas mileage as opposed to horrific gas mileage. I'll show you what we ordered. This is an eBay special, and like I said, it worked great for me. Don't let anyone talk you out of doing a spacer lift if you're broke and you just wanna lift your Sequoia, because they're just fine. Alright guys, I thought I should just clarify something real quick. If you're building an off-road rig, I would not recommend a spacer lift. They offer very little articulation on the trail. There's a few situations where I think a spacer lift is fine. If you're young, you're broke, you just want to get your Sequoia up on some big tires, it's a daily driver. These things, they just look really good on big tires. There's no doubt about that. Or you're in a situation like I was. I was saving up for a proper lift, but in the meantime, I just wanted to start getting my hands dirty. I learned a lot about my truck while I was installing the spacer lift, and a lot of that knowledge came in really handy when it was time to install the real lift. So what we got here is the strut towers. So see, these are going to just go on top of our existing factory struts, and it's going to boost them up 3 inches. This is the hardware for the top of the strut tower, and these are the spring spacers for the rear. So these are just going to go between the body and the springs. We'll get the front of the truck up in the air, take the wheels off, and then we'll start on the front. So 12mm bolt here, 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 and then 2 under here. This hooks up here, so you just push up and back, and it slides out, and it's light. And the reason we did that is so we could get under here and we have a point to jack from. All right guys, I got it jacked up. Got a jack stand placed here and here. And this thing, it won't be in my way, so I'm just gonna leave it in there for good measure. If you can't get to this step by yourself, you really have no business doing this job. Sway bar length to 14. Do the other side too. 4 lower ball joint bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're 14mm on this truck. Can you get in and start the car and turn the wheel to the left, please? Now you can take this whole assembly. Lower shock bolt, 1919. There's a big screwdriver and place it on the head of the bolt. You could push it through the hole, but then whatever you use to push it through gets in there and gets stuck. That's happened to me a bunch of times. I like to take a wire brush to the top, move all this dirt. And now we just take our spacer, slide it over, start them by hand, and give you a whole lot of room to work with. So if yours gets stuck, what I did was I just gripped the vice grips on it as well as I could and then just pounded it off. Here's what we end up with. And instead of studs to mount this now, we got bolts. But we still have to line these holes up. They're exact mirror images, so it shouldn't be a problem. What is going to be a problem is trying to fit this giant spring now in that tiny space. All right, we got the top hat on. Let's see how far off we are. So that's very far. Okay, we're gonna loosen the cam bolts. So clean them up, mark them. That way if you end up having trouble, you know where they were at least at before you started, so you have a starting point. And then you just want to loosen these, the ones on the outside. You may have to hold the other side. I'm not having to right now, so. It's releasing the tension on this lower control arm. It naturally wants to stay where it's at. Also take note, CV boot is stretched out pretty far. You don't want to go too much farther than that. I think we'll be all right. Okay, so what I did was I ran a cargo strap from here on that long bolt around the hub and back up again to that long bolt. And then I boosted it up while my wife tugged on the thing. So now it's basically supported in midair, and we can play around with this without having the entire weight of this assembly on the lower control arm. I'm going to continue to loosen the lower control arm. Okay, now that's loose. I believe if I wanted to, I could just push this down. Yep. So this is loose. This is held up. We're going to try to fit the shock and see how far off we are. So we're going to stick it up here again. Oh, you know what? I'm going to get a few bolts in there. Bolt started here. Okay, got two started and the third. Okay, once you get them started, you want to make sure it's in its groove, because sometimes if you get them all screwed in, it's impossible to move it afterwards. I'm going to tighten all these. All right, we're actually not too far off. See, that's a problem. You get through on one side and then it jams up on the other side. Guys, if this happens to you, you just need a jack. This is a 12-ton bottle jack from Harbor Freight, but you can also use the jack that came with the Sequoia. As soon as I jack this up, holes are magically line up. Washer nut. Boost it up so we can get the lower ball joint seated. Now we can release the tension off this guy and set it back down in its home. Don't forget the thread locker on your lower ball joint bolts. So yeah, jacking it up helps seat this spindle on the lower ball joint. This jack is actually crucial to this job. Okay, once you got your lower ball joint bolts back in, might as well test them while you're under here. Plenty of videos on how to do that. I just tested these and they're fine. The cam bolts get tightened on the ground, and also the shock bolt gets tightened on the ground. So what we got to do now is get this guy back on. So make sure the other one is sticking straight up like this on the other side, and just put it down. And then unless you're replacing it, you're just gonna put it back together the same way it was. You might as well tighten these on the ground too, because otherwise you're just gonna smash these rubber bushings together. All right, time for the rears. Jack it up by the rear diff. Set some jack stands right in front of the lower control arm mounts. We want to lower this. Would you go to the jack bid and turn it counterclockwise? Okay. All right, guys, this is your sway bar end link, and you want to disconnect it right here. What you got is a 17mm nut around a 6mm hex. This is because there's a ball joint on the other side, and otherwise they would just spin and spin and spin. When these things are rusty or corroded, you just basically have to cut them off. But we're gonna take our 17, put it on. We're gonna take our impact and we're gonna put it in forward, not reverse. Drives that nut right off. 12mm for the emergency brake cable. All right, we're gonna remove the lower pan hard bolt. Now we got to remove the bottom shock bolt. 17. I'm going to jack up the pumpkin and then remove the other lower shock mount bolt. All right, and I got my bottle jack on a 2x4 on the lower control arm, and the top is resting against this round frame cross member. So we're going to try to get as much room in here as humanly possible. So with any luck, pop it up. Definitely going to clean this channel where the bottom of the spring rests. Being very careful not to get this tangled up in it, which has happened to me. Oh, and being careful not to take any paint off. It's amazing to me. If you guys are looking for a Sequoia, pay the extra money to get one from a rust-free state. I mean, these things are eaten alive in some states. Look at that cross member. We paid $5,000 for this one. 230,000 miles. Limited leather, sunroof. I don't know how you guys are doing, what your prices are like, but in California, That's a bargain. Alright guys, it's been about a month since I started this project. They sent the wrong rear spacers. They were polyurethane and they looked like they would work, but they wouldn't. The situation is, if you have the third row seat installed and you have the tow hitch, the springs are bigger. So you gotta make sure when you order that you get the right ones. I know these are the right ones because these are the ones I used when I first lifted my Sequoia. Very basic. Just a spacer. This is the new one, and I'll of course give you guys links. That's what we're talking about. Okay, so it's seated. Going back and forth, side to side, making sure it's seated. All right, so couldn't ask for more. We're seated down there. And we're seated up there, right where it's supposed to be at. So guys, the passenger side is the same. It's a bit more challenging because the panhard bar mounts down here, so you can't get at it right from this side and right from this side. I was able to get these spring compressors clocked perfectly so that from this side I come in between the sway bar and the axle, and this side I can duck under the speed sensor wire and creep up like that with a wobble. Make sure when you're setting these up and the spring is out of the truck that you orient the spring on the ground in the same orientation as it would be in the truck. So like I even go as far as to put a little paint mark here, front, rear, and then you can get these on in such a way that when you get it installed in the truck, you have access to these bolt heads and you won't have to take it apart and redo it. One more thing that seems to help the situation is some lithium grease on the threads. Passenger side is in. Found its happy home. In my experience, shocks need to come off for sure. Sway bar end links need to come off for sure. And one end of the panhard bar needs to come off for sure. And the thing just drops. And it's still got a little bouncy room to it. So I'm gonna put this all back together in the reverse order I took it apart. I'm gonna jack this rear end up now. It needs to come up about 4 inches so I can reattach the shock to the shock mount. I don't know if you guys can see that red tint. That tells me this thing has been thread locked before, so I'm going to thread lock it again. Sway bar links. Put your impact in reverse. Alright, we got the panhard bar. And this can be a struggle to get it lined up, but all you really have to do is move that jack up or down. These bushing holes will either go left or right, and you just have to look, watch what happens, and adjust it so it's right in the center. Let's see where we're at right now. And the bolt comes in from this side. This is something a lot of you Toyota guys know, but for the new guys, if you look at this bolt, you see 6 little ridges. If you're ever wondering which way the bolt goes in, you just check the hole. Nothing there. 6 ridges on that one. That's an easy way to identify which way a bolt goes in. And once this is in, I'm trying to twist it right now. Sometimes you really don't even need to hold this on this side. You watch it almost drop into its place. Seated. Not going anywhere. Pretty cool. So, enough dilly-dally. I'm gonna try to get you a view of what's going on here. All right, guys, this is the upper panhard bar mount, and I'm trying to show you what I was talking about. Where, see this? No bueno. So I'm gonna lower the jack a little bit and see what happens. Nope, further away. So now I'm gonna raise the jack. Perfect. I went up about 9 pumps, and it looks like we're good. And all I was doing, guys, was raising and lowering this, moving the axle up and down. Each time you do that, it moves this bar a little bit left or a little bit right. So people use ratchet straps. I prefer the jack method. So that's looking a lot more proportional to the front. Definitely. What do you think, babe?
I like it.
Like it better?
Yeah.
What do you think, Malia? She likes it. Yeah, it's looking sick. And it'll probably be a bit of a stiffer riding back at first. And it will probably settle a little bit too. Nah, it won't. I lied. Those are old springs. They've settled all they're gonna settle. For reference, guys, she's running 33s on 18-inch rims. The rims themselves have 0 offset, so we're running 2-inch spacers. Just a little bit of pokey. Just a little bit. Looks good. My wife loves it, even though she's 8.5 months pregnant. When she found out she was pregnant, she asked me to take the side steps off. And then when she was like 4 or 5 months pregnant, she asked me to lift it 3 inches. I found a good one, guys. Good women are still out there.